You're listening to the Show Up Sister podcast, where we stop showing off and we start showing up. Today is the start of something new, the very first episode of the Show Up Sister podcast. It almost feels unreal to be recording this episode today, but I could not be more excited to finally get this out into the world because it's been a while. I am also joined by my amazing mom and sister to start off this season strong. So say hello, you two.
Hello.
Hey. I found it only fitting that in this episode, we share the story of what has brought us together today. So before we dive in, I would love for you two to share a little bit about yourself with the sisterhood so they can get to know you guys a little bit better. So Mom, why don't you start us off?
My name's Emily, and I'm married to my best friend, Brian, of 24 years. We have 3 kids. Obviously, Kirsten and Baylee are the 2. They're married. And then we have a son, Ian, who's 16, and he's working in All About the Girls right now. And I am a business owner and a pastor's wife. We've been in ministry for 21 years.
That's awesome. So let's have Kirsta also share her story.
Okay. My name's Kirsta. I am married. I've been married for almost 4 years. It'll be 4 years in October. I am a dog mom to the most amazing, beautiful Siberian Husky named Sven. And yes, he is named after the reindeer from Frozen. I love to travel. I am a travel agent, travel planner, whatever you want to call it. I can plan your vacation. Shameless plug. I love to travel. I love to cook. I love anything and everything about Disney, Disney World, Disneyland. I love the history of it. My husband does too. Our whole family. We're about to go on a Disneyland vacation here in just over a week.
Yeah.
So we are very excited about that. Business owner, travel planner, wife, and dog mom. That sums it up.
Yeah, and like Kirsta said, we love Disney so much, and it's a big part of our childhood. Like, we grew up in Florida. It was our life. And a big thing, too, that she mentioned is she loves to cook. And we all love food. Like, food is the epicenter of who we are as a family. We're foodies.
Not because of Mom.
Yeah, Mom is, like, not a cook. Like, she would prefer to not ever be in the kitchen. But we all love food. We're foodies. We like to go out to eat. We love the experience of enjoying a meal together. And so that actually segues right into our first topic and kind of navigates the rest of this conversation about having a meal around the table and that community that sitting around the dinner table can have. So I love that this podcast is a roundtable discussion because that is the heart of who we are. We want a safe space for women to come and feel free to share their story, share their heart, share the deepest parts of who they are, and hopefully and prayerfully resonate with the audience, you know. I have so many exciting guests coming up this season and so many things that I feel like the Lord will really just speak to us through. So as we get started, Mom, would you please share with us kind of your heart behind, you know, gathering at the table and what that looks like and like kind of how that started?
Well, for how it started was as a child for myself, it was a very special place that my mom held very dear to the family. My dad worked swing shift, so 1 week he'd be on first shift, 1 week it could be seconds, and then thirds. So to have normalcy for dinner was very important to her. And so that was the one thing that if anything could be normal, it was the dinner table. And a lot of conversation happened there. A lot of life growth for me as a kid and a teenager happened there. And I wanted that experience to filter over into my own children. And that's what we did. I think, you know, your dad and I did a really good job of allowing that to be a safe place for you guys. A place that you could talk about what you were going through and not be reprimanded for something, or you could just come with whatever it was that you were going through, like, you know, for the day of what you learned at school or what was life was troubling you. It was a safe place that you could open up and not have to go to bed with it, wearing you down. I know a lot of conversation took place at the dinner table. I would say probably not always the best because, like Kirsta has brought up before, I was in the medical field. So I talked about a lot of things that may not have been necessarily appropriate at the dinner table, but it kept conversation going. And whether it be good or bad. And I think that that's what the dinner table for us was for too, because, it wasn't just for you guys to open up and talk, but it was also for Dad and I to be able to talk and have that openness with you guys, especially in ministry. So much happens in ministry and relationships. And we just wanted to have you guys to know it was okay to talk just as much as we wanted to be able to talk to you guys about what was going on in life.
Yeah, and I definitely would say as a kid at the dinner table, we definitely saw that. We definitely experienced that safe space. And Kirsta, would you mind sharing kind of how that has impacted the way that you do life and the way that, or maybe even how that impacted you as a kid, like what that was like for you?
Yeah. Yeah, like my mom said, like every night the dinner was at the same time. Every night. Still is, literally. And it was the foundation of normalcy. It was the place like, okay, I know that I'm going to come home from school, I'm going to do my homework, and then I know I'm going to sit down at the dinner table and I'm going to talk about my day. And it wasn't just me. We went around the whole table. Everybody talked about their day, the good, the bad, the ugly, good grades, bad grades. Like my sister knew what my grades were, and the good ones and the bad ones, because everything was fleshed out at the dinner table.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because when I got married, Matt's family, they didn't do that. Their dinner table, because they were missionaries for 8 years in the Dominican Republic, and their dinner table, their normalcy was sitting on the couch watching TV, and that's what they did after a long day working with teams or whatever it was. That was the couch watching TV during dinner was their thing, and they continued that on when they moved back to the States. And so for me, it was really weird, and getting used to it took a while because there wasn't a whole lot of conversation that happened. It was more just like congregating and enjoying something. They enjoyed the same thing together for them. And so when we got married, it was trying to find this balance of, okay, do we sit at the table and talk, or do we sit on the couch and watch TV? So we kind of had to figure out what our mix was. And then when we moved to Utah, we went straight back into how our family did it growing up, which was sitting at the dinner table. And dinner is still at the same time every day between 5:30 and 6.
Yeah.
And Monday nights are family night. You got to be there. But we also want to be there. It's not like we have to, or it's like we desire to be together on that specific day, because that's the one night that because we're all busy. Our 16-year-old brother is now working almost 40 hours a week. So that's the night that we can all just relax for a minute, and not just relax, but it's like, hey, how's your week been?
Right.
Because we don't see Baylee and Chase every day. We don't see Ian every day because he's working now, and
it's a checkpoint.
Yeah, it's this thing, and I've mentioned it before. Matt, every day he'll come home from work and say, "What's the plan for dinner?" Like, he knows now that we all sit down at the dinner table, we have dinner, we eat, we talk, and we talk about life. We talk a lot about ministry now. Like, that's a big part of our lives here in Utah.
And when we first got married, Chase and I swear I thought Chase liked my family more than me, because he would ask every single day, so what's the plan for dinner? Do they want us to bring anything? Are we going to go over for dinner? What is I'm like, can we not just make our own food? And, it was just funny to watch. Well,
it's funny that you say that, because when we moved here, we lived in a tiny house, a camper.
Yeah.
And we lived about 20 minutes away. And it was hard for us to go back and forth. Mm-hmm. And Matt, literally almost every day, if we were at y'all's house, he'd be like, so are we staying here for dinner? I'm like, no, I bought groceries specifically for this week.
We
Like,
have a budget.
We have a plan. You know, we spent money on food. We're going to go make our food.
Right.
And I love to cook. So for him, same thing. Like,
Right.
it's like, does he like their cooking better than mine? Or, you know? So.
Yeah. No, it's really funny. And it just shows like the
And
impact that
it's good
community
for
has.
us. Yeah, like our husbands like our family.
Yeah,
you
it's
know? Like,
true.
It's good. Like, I'm
That's
sure
a
you
good
guys
thing
like
to
it.
look out for, ladies.
Yeah.
Is a
Yeah.
husband who likes your family.
Yeah, but I also think it comes back to community. It's that sense of belonging.
Yeah.
You know, that's what's important. And I think that that's where showing up at the dinner table is even for women. I think that that's really important, that we know that we can be there for each other and community. And yeah.
Totally. I mean, our dinner table was the place where we fleshed out the root of the problem for everything. And so often, I mean, unexpected things come up. Like, you know, you might fall on the bike one day and have to run inside and it's dinner time and, you know, you kind of cry it out, you figure it out, you get to the root of the problem, and then people rush to your aid. One person runs to get a Band-Aid. The other person runs to get the cleaner for, you know, hydrogen peroxide or Neosporin. And that's just how family works. That's how community works. It's something that when something goes awry and something we weren't anticipating comes up, they're there for you. And so today, what I want to talk about and really dive into is intentionality in relationships and community, and the importance of genuine community, because in a day of superficial filtered world, like, it can be very hard to find friends. And a lot of times we try to, you know, fit our online community as our end all be all, which is great. And trust me, a lot of my friends are on the internet, but there's nothing like that local community. There's nothing like the people who you can call at 2 a.m. to come over and make sure everything's okay. I can kind of count on one hand the amount of times I've called people in the middle of the night, but one in particular that is like flashing to my head. And it was recently after we had gotten Nala, and she was probably a year old, but still a puppy. German Shepherds are like puppies until they're 5. And so I was nervous because she had fallen or jumped or did something, and she was yelping because her leg was in pain. And the only people I could think of to call was my parents. And yeah, Chase was there, and he was like, babe, it's gonna be okay. She's gonna be fine. And I'm like, I just have to call somebody. I just need to share what is going on with somebody. And yeah, it was my parents, but fill in the blank for who that could be for you. And I just remember like that importance of, I was crying. I was like, Dad, come please. Like, she's hurt. She's crying. And like, whatever that feels like I'm just picturing all the things, but that community that you can call in the middle of the night. You were going to say something here, Steph?
I have a very similar story. We were still living in South Carolina, and I don't know if you remember this, but it was right before we moved to Utah, or in between. I don't remember if we had decided to move out here yet or what, but...
Are you talking about the time I spent?
No. I don't remember that time. But, no, it was like 11:30 my time, or 11 o'clock our time in South Carolina. So it was about 9:30 here, I guess. And I was just having severe chest pain. And I didn't know what was wrong. It had been happening a lot, like too much. It was getting a little scary. And then this one night, it was so bad. And we were upstairs at Matt's parents' house. And Matt's mom was home, and I love her to death. But the only person I wanted to call was you. And turns out I had severe anxiety. Thank goodness it was just anxiety and it was nothing worse. But it was just like, all I wanted to do was call our mom.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, like, again, that just goes to show, like, who are those people going to be when you call? And maybe it's parents, maybe it's friends, you know, but your family is who you make it. Yeah. Your family, a lot of family is who you allow in on the things in your life. And I mean, growing up in ministry, so often our family expanded so much. Yeah. Our Thanksgiving dinner table was never just the Millette family. It was always, it still isn't. It was always the Millette family plus 10. But, you know, all of that being said, it can be very hard to find those people, especially because, maybe church attendance isn't high, whatever that looks like for your life. Maybe you don't work in a conventional workspace or what have you, but Mom, with all of your years of wisdom and many friendships that, many have been beautiful and fruitful and blessed, but some have also ended hard. What can you say to listeners who might be seeking out friends or might be going through something hard with friends or just might be struggling with the idea of community, that it's even possible for them?
Yeah, I would say, first of all, remember, people are people, and we all go through things. So if it's a fruitful relationship, just be there and show up for them, and they'll do likewise for you. If it's a relationship that you're struggling, or they've turned their back on you, or what have you, and whether that's family or friends, remember, people are people, and when they're hurting, they don't necessarily mean to shut you out. It's a defense mechanism. Sometimes, but be there for them, even when it's hard, because it can be pretty painful, I think, sometimes, because you also want to take that root of bitterness and put it in, and like, oh, I don't want to be there for them, but don't let the enemy win like that, because when you let bitterness take root, so much more happens, and it can get really ugly. So I would say be real, be raw, show up, even when it hurts, because that's where you're going to see the fruit, because even it could be a painful relationship, but when you show up, there could be fruit out of that, because they may be going through something and it's far deeper than what you could, you understand, but you being there, they see, wow, I do need you in my life, or thank you for being there, when they couldn't even tell you what was going on.
Right.
Just being there for them. I would say that being transparent and authentic in your relationship is important, because so many people try to hide behind, social media or the door. They won't. We don't have community in our neighborhoods anymore. We stay in our backyards, and we're not out in front socializing. I think showing up for people, when you move into a neighborhood, just be there for that person. Let them know that you're available. And there's so much more I can think of, but those are the.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, we've seen it so many times, and I mean, the church is a revolving door for so many different things, because that's just how life goes. That's how it happens. People move on and things like that, and it can be hard to continue friendships miles and miles away. But being here in Utah, we've seen family come to Utah and visit us from so many different seasons of life, because we invested. We were intentional with where we were in that season. And a lot of times we could sit in a season and be like, okay, God, why do you have me here? Right. We'd be like, why do you have me here? Because I'm unhappy, or I'm not really settled with where you have me. But the reality is he has you there to be intentional with where you're at. And a lot of times the greatest friendships come from seasons like that. I mean, we were in Florida for so long, and we met families, family.
And let me add to that. I think that the dinner table extends outside of the physical home. The dinner table is in community of your local church, your workplace, your kids' baseball teams, functions. Extend that dinner table and invite those people in. I think it's more than just your family and your physical home. Your neighbors, invite them over for a barbecue. Get to know them. We've lost that sense of community in today's world, that I think that needs to be replenished, because that's where life happens, and that's where life change begins.
Yeah, that's good. Being the activator, not always waiting to receive. I mean, right. So often we aren't always open to receiving new community, and I might let Kirsta touch on this in a minute, but letting people in, or also being the person who opens the door. Hey, why don't you come over for a card game night? Or why don't you come on over and we can just hang out? Or, hey, here's my number. In case anything ever happens, I'm here, you know, and it doesn't have to go beyond anything further than that, but just saying, hey, here, you have my number. You can call me when you need me.
Yeah.
And nothing even beyond that. But Kirsta, would you share with us maybe some ways that you have found, places you have found that are a great source of where to find community, and maybe just some tips of how to get started with community? Like maybe you move, I mean, you just made a big move. Like, how do you kind of insert yourself into new community?
Yeah. Okay, right off the bat, honestly, a big part of moving from South Carolina to Utah was community. We came on launch Sunday of the Springs Church out here in Utah and didn't know anybody, didn't even know your fiance.
Yeah.
And we showed up that Sunday morning and we found community.
Yeah.
And it was this instant feeling of I guess I was missing it, but I didn't really realize that I was missing it because we had a church family. We have a church family in South Carolina that we love so dearly. But there was it was something different. And it even now, like, Sunday mornings are so special to me because I know that I'm going to go and see my family, my extended family. So, most important to me, it might look different for somebody who's listening, but the local church is a great place to start looking for community, because you're going to be in community. You're going to find people who share that common ground of a belief in a relationship with Jesus.
Yeah.
And there's so much to be had with that life group or a small group. And there's groups for everything.
Yeah.
You know, we have pickleball groups at our church. We have golf. We have so many different things. There's literally something for everybody. And if it's not at a local church, there's local groups.
Yeah.
Search on Facebook.
Yep.
It's so easy. There's a group for anything that you have a common interest with, and join even a cooking class or a cake decorating class that gets advertised in your city. Do that. Like, that would be a great way to find people. But most importantly, and it's probably the hardest part of finding community, is being open to finding community.
Yeah.
You have to be willing to put yourself out there. In a day and age that it's so hard to do that, even though it's so easy with social media to kind of put ourselves out there, but it's almost this false sense of security, because even though it's on social media, you're not really talking with the person face to face.
Well, there's a big difference between showing off and showing up.
Right.
And I think that we see that so often.
One's a lot easier than the other.
Exactly, because showing up reveals.
Yep.
Showing off is like, hey, look at the image of me that I want you to believe I am.
Yep.
But showing up is, hey, look at every piece of me.
Yeah.
And a lot of times we forget the step. Like, yes, genuine community is so important. And that is genuinely why the Show Up Sisterhood podcast is here in existence, because of community and creating a space for stories to be shared. But the biggest relationship to invest in is your relationship with God. And if we're not showing up for that, it's going to make it very hard to know how to act or react when things happen.
The easiest one to show up for.
Right. And I think a lot of times fear or shame or guilt keeps us from that. But the beauty of grace, you know, and having community to remind you of that grace. So, with all of that being said, we've had a very great conversation, ladies. I would love for each of you to maybe share one last encouragement, but also where people can find you outside of the podcast. So, Mom, you start first.
Encouragement, I would say, begin your walk showing up for God, because we anticipate Him to show up for us, but we don't do it for Him. So I encourage you, if you're listening today, start opening up your Bible, start journaling, praying, worship. Begin there, and you'll see relationships of others, open up for you as well. Especially if you're seeking those relationships, God will provide those for you. If you're the one that wants to show up for someone, God will also will show you those people that you're supposed to show up for, even when you least expect it. And yeah, so, and you can find me on Instagram, social media, or Facebook. So
yeah, I'll link all of their stuff in the description of today's podcast. But Kirsta, why don't you share your encouragement, your last bit of advice, wisdom, big sister advice?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I don't want to follow up Mom. That was so good. Yeah, something with your relationship with God, I think it's something to remember is He's going to show up regardless, but He's going to show up bigger when we show up for Him.
Yeah.
And He's going to show up, like I said, regardless, but we also have to be willing and have our eyes open to
noticing.
Like it's so easy to get bogged down if something's not going the way we want it and just kind of ignore what God is actually doing in our life, even though it's not in this one instance that we're searching for Him, but it's like, oh, but He's still over here. He's still doing all this other stuff. So just remembering that God is still good in everything, even when it seems like He's not there. So that would be my encouragement. And you can find me on Instagram and Facebook. I have a couple accounts for both, with all my different little things that I do.
Your endeavors.
So you can find me there. I post a lot of smiles, and that would be my other encouragement, is just smile. Like, we should smile more.
Stop taking life so seriously.
Yeah, like that's my Instagram. I like to have fun. I like to just spread joy. That's what I'm all about. It's just showing up and spreading joy.
And if you like travel or Disney, thrifting, dogs, Kirsta's a great account for that. And Mom is encouraging, always writing. She writes a lot. She's a writer at heart. Full of wisdom.
She has a blog too.
Yeah, she has a blog, all of that kind of stuff.
I have a blog too. I forgot.
Oh my gosh, look at all of us lovely ladies.
We're very creative.
God definitely blessed us with creativity for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Hopefully this isn't the last time you'll have us, because this is really fun.
Yeah, this is not the last conversation. I'm sure you'll see Kirsta and Mom. But anyways, that's, I think, the end of today's episode. But thank you guys so much for joining with me today.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right, and until next time, we're signing off.
Show up.
Oh, Mom. Thanks so much for tuning in to our first ever episode. Make sure to leave a review so that we can continue to grow this online community. Catch us on Instagram at Show Up Sisterhood, and until next time.